Well, we have some decent news this Sunday morning. Kevin McCarthy is finally in a tight spot. One of the worst rats in all of Washington, a terrible man in both his personal and professional life, someone who constantly stabs his own voters in the back, hates them, and also, betrays his own family by carrying on extramarital affairs with other members of Congress. So just an overall shit stain of a human being. Matt Gaetz has announced that he will be filing a motion to vacate the chair, which he has been threatening for quite some time. This is essentially like in a parliamentary country, this would be like a vote of no confidence. And so what they need is I believe they need a majority of people to vote yes on the resolution in the House. And then McCarthy will be kicked out the door. He will no longer be the Speaker of the House. And the House will have to go through the normal process, like they do at the beginning of every term, of selecting a new Speaker. Where someone gets nominated and then they hold a ballot, and they have to keep going and having ballots until some candidate gets a majority of the votes. Yeah. Now, Kevin McCarthy, quite publicly, has been very agitated with Matt Gaetz over all of this talk for the last few months. He apparently has been weighing on him very heavily, much more than his actual job seems to weigh on him. The idea that his power could be challenged is what really gets to him. Nothing to do with like the actual country that he's supposed to be part of running. The Speaker of the House is third, or is it fifth? Wait, it goes. No, he's third in line for the presidency. If the president and vice president were killed tomorrow, Kevin McCarthy would become the president of the United States. So he is someone who's supposed to care about America, but he cares much more about his own little fiefdom, because he is a tiny little man who could never be bothered to give a damn about anyone but himself. And so Matt Gaetz is saying now that he is going to finally file the motion because, well, one, he now has the votes, and two, McCarthy's latest act of betrayal and deceit, cutting a backroom deal with the Democrats to fund Ukraine. Isn't that great? After we were told, hey, we're gonna rein in this Ukraine nonsense. Well, he just, they passed of course, a continuing resolution to avoid the government shutdown. It was bipartisan, and part of that bipartisan deal was McCarthy vowed to hold a vote, an up or down vote, on supporting Ukraine, which of course is going to pass, because you're going to have all the Democrats vote for it, and you're going to have most Republicans vote for it. Because all of Congress cares much more about defending Ukraine's borders than our own. They care much more about keeping the Raytheon factories at full output rather than keeping Americans employed, keeping food on the table, keeping our country from imploding, keeping our streets from turning into crack dens, open air drug markets, rampant homeless encampments on every sidewalk in America. This is truly Kevin McCarthy's America. This is what his leadership has wrought. He's no less responsible than Joe Biden or anybody else. I bet you if old Kevin McCarthy had been in Ottawa on the day in which that Waffen-SS veteran was being honored by the Canadian Parliament, Kevin McCarthy would have been clapping right along with him. And if he was told, hey, actually, that guy who fought for Ukraine in World War II, they were on the Nazi side or whatever, and he was actually in the Waffen-SS. He had the lightning bolts on his uniform. Kevin McCarthy wouldn't have batted an eye. He wouldn't have even flinched. Because if supporting the SS and mass genocide, that's all just a part of being a good friend to Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. He's already used to that in other countries. You think that Kevin McCarthy would scoff at what the Nazis did? Look at what he's been a part of in his lifetime, in his career. Iraq, Yemen, Afghanistan. I don't remember if he was in the House for Serbia. Although, that was just the bombing of civilians. That wasn't quite that wasn't quite on the level of genocide, like say Yemen. But the guy's he's worse than evil, because evil has a certain self-awareness to it. Kevin McCarthy does not. He simply sees nothing wrong. He's amoral. He's a machine programmed to propagate death and destruction for profit. And so Gaetz says he has the votes to remove this man. What that would mean is that he has enough Republicans who are willing to defect, such that the remaining Republicans do not make up a majority. I'm not sure how large the Republican majority is. I forgot to check. I mean, it doesn't really matter. Gaetz says he has enough, so that's all you need to know. So at this point, if he's telling the truth, for McCarthy to remain Speaker, he would need a few Democrats to cross the aisle and vote for him in order to regain a majority. And so Kevin McCarthy would then be a bipartisan Speaker, which has not happened. I can actually, well, I'm sure it's happened at some point, perhaps, but I cannot tell you the last time it did happen. It probably wasn't any time in, it would have been in the 19th century, if it's happened at all, and perhaps the 18th century. But I'm almost 100% certain it never happened in the 20th century, and it certainly hasn't happened in the 21st century. We do not have coalition governments in the House of Representatives. The other thing that the Democrats could do, I guess, would be, I don't know if voting present works, but if they didn't show up and there was a smaller number of overall people there, the number required for the Republicans to have a majority would be less. So let's say that, theoretically, the House was 50-50 split between Democrats and Republicans. But on the day of the vote, 10 Democrats don't show up. Well, now the Republicans have a 10-seat majority, and so McCarthy could lose 9 Republican votes and still maintain his majority because 10 Democrats didn't show up. That's the other thing the Democrats could do if they want to make sure that McCarthy stays Speaker, but they don't want to actually debase themselves by voting for such a horrible man. And I think that's probably the only thing that could happen at this point, because the Democrats are very upset with McCarthy over the impeachment inquiry, which, it's smart on Gaetz's part that he's timing the motion to vacate right after McCarthy finally, he did the wet fart of an impeachment inquiry. He's having hearings on whether or not they should file impeachment. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's such a nothing thing. But it was supposed to be McCarthy throwing a bone to the right, and the right is like, this is nothing. You're giving us, peanuts. And the Democrats are pissed. They're saying, oh my God, you're trying to impeach Joe Biden. You crazy radical Republican, you McCarthy. And so there's really no way for the Democrats to publicly support him. So that would be what I would watch for. On the day in which this motion happens, I would check, see if all the Democrats are present. If they are, things are beginning pretty shaky for McCarthy, because the Democrats that are there, I would think, would be obligated to vote against McCarthy in this kind of a vote, even though deep down they know that they probably would like whoever replaces McCarthy even less. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow.